This guy doesn't need any introduction. He's known all over the place. Is Mr. Abel Bosum. He's our former Grand Chief of the Cree Nation for USG. He was also the former chief of Ojibwe, this beautiful community, and also the president of what is it? USG of James Bay government. And I don't know if I'm missing anything, but he has all various capacities in our nation. But he was also very instrumental in the creating of the cultural, the Cree Culture Institute, as well as his community. Welcome, Abel. Glad to have you.
Wajah.
So one of the questions, this beautiful place and this beautiful community, and I know you were very instrumental in creating the community and as well as the Cultural Institute, Anstjaugum is what it's called, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what was your passion, what was your driving force, and what inspired you to move forward with this?
Yeah, well, when it goes way back. When I was young, I recall traveling on the land with my grandfather. Mm-hmm. And of course, life back then was sort of nomadic, was based on hunting, fishing, and trapping. And then suddenly, at the age of 5, I was removed from my parents and sent away to a residential school. Mm-hmm. And, so I'm a survivor of the residential school system. I spent 10 years in residential schools. But while I was there, I was lost. I felt lost. I didn't know who I was. I wasn't allowed to speak my language and do any of the things that I learned from my grandfather. And of course, I was also displaced, from the Cree territory to, a southern town. And so that really resonated, it really touched me, and feeling kind of lost. And it wasn't until I met a girl from Wasanape. Her name was Sophie. Sophie Happyjack was her name. And we got along, real good friends. And one thing we both realized is that we both came from communities who had been displaced. She was living way up in Matagami, and I was living in Dory Lake, and we saw we didn't like where we were, and I think it was that passion to change things, and of course as we grew up and as we fell in love,
Did the Otter's brothers
we also talking about our future. We said, well, we wouldn't want our children to live in these kind of conditions. And I would say very fortunately, in 1975, when the Cree signed the James Bay and Quebec Agreement, it was the year we got married. Sophie and I got married. And 2 years later, in 1977, I joined to work with the Grand Council of the Crees of Quebec. And, my role was to help the implementation of the James Bay and Quebec Agreement. And so throughout this time, and trying to understand the treaty itself, and try to understand the elders and the leaders at that time, I realized that the backbone of the Cree Nation was the Cree culture, was the Cree way of life. The strongest arguments in court came from hunters and trappers, who were out on the land and lived on the land and they had a tradition, they had a language and so forth, So I devoted I should say, my wife and I devoted our lives basically trying to implement the agreement. She worked for the school board. I worked with the Grand Council, and then in the 80s, coming home to my parents and to my grandparents, they popped the question, what happened? Why are we not in the James Bay Agreement? Why are we not recognized, And so Ted Moses was Grand Chief at that time, and so I asked him if he would allow me to go home and see what we can do. And after a lot of research and so forth, we finally were able to document a book that justified that the Ojibwe people were a separate group, and that this error stemmed way back in 1950 when Indian Affairs was administering, native lands and so forth. They just, for administrative purposes, they lumped us into with Mistissini. And so the whole struggle from there was to get formal recognition and also to be incorporated in the James Bay Northern Quebec Agreement. And so, it took a long time, a lot of lobbying. We had to block roads, we had to do all kinds, anything to get the attention. Because everybody thought, well, the agreement is signed, there's nothing, can't do anything anymore, can't open it, and so forth. And so, but again, through a lot of hard work from different people, we finally did get an agreement with Quebec. Quebec finally agreed to set aside land for us, and then of course that forced Canada, to deal with us and to look at the question of recognition. And so when we signed the agreements, then we had this opportunity to build a community, because our history has been where we've been forced to move around
So
7
were
times.
Displaced?
And displaced because of mining activities, because of forestry. We were called squatters. We were squatting on government land. And so not recognizing us, of course, was a way to deal with us. But so that's why it was important for us to get formal recognition. And so once we got the formal recognition, then of course, we had this opportunity to build a new village. It was like getting a clean sheet of paper, and it was up to us to plan it out. And so after consulting with the experience of other Cree communities and other First Nations across Canada, we wanted to build a village that would speak to us, that would make us feel home. This is our home. And so, the elders played a big role, of course, in identifying what the theme should be, and so as you can see, there's a lot of Cree themes, the architecture, again there in the architecture, we were fortunate again to engage someone from Alberta, Douglas Cardinal, and he was the famous
the same guy
architect.
With what do you call it?
The Canadian Museum of Civilization back then. And so he came here and he spent time with us, and for him it was good too, because he had gone through a very hard time with that project, and he needed to rejuvenate, and so this project here really helped, I would say, both of us, And so as we were building, and the Cree Nation formed an organization for the Cree cultural coordinators. And it was from that idea that, they wanted a museum. And so as chief at that time, we said, hey, let's put our bidding, let's put our name in as a community that could house, this cultural institute. And of course, eventually it was called Ansjogumuk. Ansjogumuk, of course, means, the passing on of knowledge and tradition and so forth, And this really fitted well with the whole concept that we had, because we wanted to build a community, not just for ourselves, because our elders told us, build the community. The community is not going to be for us, it's going to be for you and your children and your grandchildren. So designing the community was about, looking 7 generations ahead and seeing what's the legacy do we want to leave? How do our grandchildren and great-grandchildren want to feel, to know who they are? And so this was really, I guess, the passion I had. And, I'm really grateful for all the different people that worked with me and worked with us in building this beautiful community and this beautiful building here, of course.
It's beautiful. One of the things when you're talking about the design, when you look at OJ from above, I don't know if it was designed or by accident. I noticed there's an eagle's head? Okay.
That's not an accident.
Okay.
That's a vision.
Okay, good. That's really nice.
This was, an eagle has, I guess, 2 characters. Like everything, the good and the bad. Okay? And so for some people, the eagle is a bird that flies high, that sees things from above, and when there's a storm, it flies higher. It finds its way to get around that storm. So it's a very strong character. Of course, on the other hand, the bad side. Okay, like we like to hunt, right?
Yeah.
We like goose hunting and so forth, And people don't like the eagle, because the eagle comes in.
That's right.
Scares all the geese away.
I've seen that many times. Christine, I don't know if you have any questions before we move on to the next segment of this interview. You good, Christine? Okay. So one of the things too is one of the themes is the importance of language in our nation, in our communities, and we have seen some shift going on. And how do you feel about that? About the importance of language, or however?
I think it's really important, and I think it's something we really need to pay attention to, especially today. There was a study carried out that out of 1,600 languages, 1,600 languages around the world, that only 600 may survive in the next decade.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so so the language is something that we can lose. And it just takes a generation that doesn't speak it, or a generation that doesn't do anything with it, and then that language is extinct. And so when you think of it in those terms, we have to wake up to it, to the possibility of losing the Cree language. And we have all the tools, though, to protect it. We have the land, our Cree culture, our tradition. We talk about it in our language. We sing about it, and so forth. And so we have the land. We have the traditional way. Whenever we go hunting and so forth, we use the language the most, right? because it's our environment, and that's where we feel very comfortable speaking Cree and so forth. And so we need to take advantage of that. And we also need to take advantage of the fact that we have now institutions, through the agreement. We got the Cree School Board, so we have Anstjugmuk, we have, Cree Tourism Outfitting, Cree Trappers Association, all these different organizations, that have a responsibility. We all have a responsibility. We cannot expect one organization to protect it. It's a language. It's universal. It's unique. I mean, you can go to Europe and you won't hear Cree. The closest I've heard is maybe the Japanese. They have some words that sound like ours. Probably don't mean the same thing. But yeah, language is very, very important, and it's something I think that's important to pass on. And it's the legacy, when I talk about legacy, 7 generations from now, that's a legacy that we should be leaving. And it is perhaps very challenging for our young people today because of all the distraction. Yes, we have social media. Social media, yes, is good. But if you're going to spend, 8, 10 hours of your day on social media, you're not in your environment anymore. You're somewhere else. You're watching someone, or you're in another country. You're away from your home. You're away from your children. And that is that's something that we need to understand. It is good, but let's not replace who we are and the culture we have and the language we have.
One of the things you mentioned about the different the languages throughout the world, I was watching one movie one time, and they were speaking in Chinese, and they had the subtitles, and the Chinese guy asked this guy, and he says to him, "Wenji," and it's exactly what. Who are you? And I kept rewinding it, and I was trying to is this what I'm hearing? And it's true. And my wife traveled to Mongolia, and you know what she said? Yeah, some words are very similar there, especially when you go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
they have the same word, and another one, Chinese. I don't know which dialect, and they said the same thing. We say the same thing, and how do you say it? So when we go to the bathroom, when nature calls, they say the same thing.
We won't say it here.
We won't say it here, no.
Yeah, but one of the things, Wayne, I wanted to bring up here, in this Cree festival is when I talk about Anstjugmuk is really not. It's not really the building. The building, yes, is what houses us. It's what's important is what's in it. And one of the greatest achievements, in my time when I was Grand Chief, was when we discovered a beaded hood, made by a beaded hood that was used for ceremonial purposes. And this beaded hood was found in a museum in Montreal, in Lessine.
Okay.
And it was made by a Cree woman from Mistissini, Jane Gunner. And the researchers that studied the material said it was built, it was crafted back in 1850. So that was really, really special, because those artifacts, they speak to us. And I'm sure they spoke to the families when they saw that.
Wow.
I'm sure there was a lot of tears and joy, to find that artifact. Because it's like reconnection. It's like reconnecting to our ancestors. So that's why I feel that, there's still a lot to do. for Anstiogamuk, for our Cree culture and our Cree
And
language.
do you know if there's other artifacts elsewhere that were? I know there could be a lot of artifacts from our area around the world in the museums. Do you know if there's any out there?
There's a lot. There's
Okay.
many. There, you know, I think it's really a question of research and reaching out to those other institutions. Now, of course, it's easy to find them in museums, you know, but there's a lot of private collections.
I see. Okay.
You know, and it's and trying to reach out to those private collectors is the hardest thing, you know. So yeah, there's still a lot out there, and I think there's a lot out there to repatriate and to learn about and to reconnect again, you know, so that again, whatever we reconnect from centuries, we leave it to the next generations ahead.
The reason why I asked is because one time I remember my mom said mentioned. Do you remember late Josie Sam? Yeah, he was a chief. He was one part of the negotiations as well.
Yes.
And he came in to my late dad. I was a young girl. She said she asked about if they could make pipes. You know how they used to make them? They're small, eh? And they had a little design there. So he made them. He made 5, and he said it was for a museum. Didn't mention which one.
Yeah.
So he said that was the last time I seen him when Josie came to pick them up. So when I traveled to New York one time, and I was looking around, I saw a whole bunch of pipes in one of the museums, and I was thinking, I wonder if that's it.
Well, it would be wonderful, you know, it would be really wonderful to repatriate.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like I said, I'm sure there's a lot out there, and we can learn a lot from artifacts. You know, it's amazing. You know, I was just listening to a documentary a few weeks ago about some research in Mexico, and you know, many people think that you know, that life started at the dinosaur age, you know, so everybody was fascinated with all the discoveries and dinosaurs and so forth. But a place in Mexico, they dug deeper, and they found some human remains, you know, that were there longer than the dinosaurs.
Really? Wow.
Wow, you know, and I was quite fascinated by that documentary, and which tells us that, well, we don't know, you know, how long this earth has been evolving, you know, and certainly, of course, you know, the whole question of the Cree Nation, you know, how long have we been here, and so it's a lot to learn.
Christine, if there's any comments or questions from the audiences on the net for Mr. Abel Bosum?
Yes, thank you very much, Wayne, and thank you very much, Abel Bosum, for sharing a bit of the history of this beautiful building, the Anstiogung, the Cultural Center. And I just want to personally thank you for acknowledging the beaded hood that is housed here at the Anstiogamuk. Jane Gunner is actually from my family line, and she is I think my great grandmother. So I'm pleased and I'm honored that we were able to have to bring this artifact back home to Iuishji. So there's a lot of comments from the audience acknowledging of what you are sharing for our viewers. So they're thanking you a lot, and you are very inspiring, Abel, for being one of our leaders and you know, bringing so much to our people of Iuishji. So just to read a couple of questions here. It says here, dear Dr. Bosum, in your opinion, is the Cree language regressing or stagnating in your communities?
Sadly, I would say it's weakening. You know, when you walk around the village, you hear kids speaking English. You know, so that's an indication. But on the other hand, I know that when we go out hunt, you know, or go fishing and so forth, the language is strong. The language is strong out on the land, you know, and but in the community, there's a lot of distraction, you know, and so I think there needs to be more activities like this, you know, where the language is promoted, you know, highlighted, so that we can attract our young people, you know, to be interested in the language and the culture.
Thank you for your response. I have this other question. So it's more of, I guess, your own personal opinion. And it says here, does Dr. Bosum feel that there are successors in the new generation to continue the important work he has accomplished throughout the years? Wow, that's pretty way up there.
I believe we do have people, you know, and again, as part of my purpose and was some of the work that I tried to do when I was Grand Chief was to build capacity, because I think that we have the tools, you know, we have the tools to have the most educated youth, you know, to be professionals in whatever fields they want. And at the same time, the treaty gives us the choice and the ability to live our Cree way of life, you know, to enjoy the land and so forth, but also to contribute to society in whatever professionalism that we want to get into. So, yeah, I do see a lot of youth, you know, and our statistics, I think, in the school board are showing us, you know, that there is growth. You know, we are getting good, you know, we're getting students that are moving on to college, university, and so forth. So it's just, like I said, it's a matter of using the tools we have to encourage our young people to participate and be involved in nation building, because this is what we're doing. We're building a nation going forward, and you know, we're going to leave them with what we've learned, and we're hoping that they will pick it up and build upon that, you know, for the generations ahead of them.
All right, thank you very much. Wayne, before I pass it on to you, I just want to read a couple of comments, beautiful comments and very encouraging. It says here, I love that you are looking at building a community for 7 generations ahead. That's how we should all be thinking. Thank you for that comment. And the last one is, thank you for sharing all these wise thoughts about focusing on our roots to grow well, continue learning for us and for the next generation, reconnecting, etc. It says you're much valuable. Miigwech. Back to you, Wayne.
Thank you. So we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you very much, Abel, for, you know, it was an honor to sit next to you. I don't know if we think alike. We got the same shirt.
It was
yeah, thank you
my
very
pleasure.
much. Yeah.
Yeah.